Great, everyone. Well, we are at 7:40, so I'm going to have us get started on time since we have such a busy evening. Welcome. We are excited to have you here with us tonight. We have representatives with us from math, world language, history, and science, technology, and engineering departments this evening. The goal of this session is to give you an overview of the transition from middle school to high school and to provide you with details regarding any nuances that may exist in each of our individual departments. In our experiences in working with students and families, there are a number of questions that typically come up. And so we've designed this panel in a way to ask and answer those questions for all of you. We may have time at the end for a few questions, but we do ask that if that time arises, we keep those questions general so as not to discuss private student information in this public setting. Because we have 3 sessions this evening, this is the second of 3, we are not able to have one-on-one conversations with you at the close of the session. What we do want to make sure that you know is that if there are questions that require answers, we are available to you via email or phone, and all of our information is available on the Newton North website. So please don't hesitate to go there and then reach out to us. Without further ado, let me introduce myself. My name is Jennifer Letourneau. I am the math department chair here at Newton North High School.
And I am Tom Gwynn. I'm the interim science department head of science, engineering, and technology.
And I'm Nancy Marinucci. I'm the world language department chair.
And I'm Greg Drake. I'm the department head for history and social sciences.
And I have the first question for Nancy. Nancy, what is the transition like from middle to high school?
Well, first and foremost, students are going to find that the high school offers greatly increased curricular and extracurricular opportunities. And we believe these opportunities are very important for our students so that they can experience new curricular areas, they can experience new extracurriculars, and they can also explore their passions. Like any new place, there are a few transitions few adjustments, I should say, with the transitions. The first one being the physical building is large. So students have to learn to navigate a bigger building, get from class to class, find out where they're going. And they also need to find out who the adults are in the building and who to go for what, to meet their needs. And that happens they have an orientation at the beginning of the year, but that happens over time, and they actually come to learn the place relatively quickly. With that said, I believe that we do a good job making a big school small by focusing on building relationships with each student in our classrooms, as well as really building the relationship between the counselor and the student and the dean and the student. What other adjustments are there? Well, there's an appropriate increase in academic demands, but with a simultaneous emphasis on building skills, including skills and strategies relating to the learning processes, collaboration, problem solving, resilience, growth mindset, and communication. We want students to feel confident about asking questions, advocating for themselves, asking for help. And we know that making connections between all of these processes really helps students be successful to building their competencies. And at the same time, we're trying to guide students to be more independent learners as they go through high school, to invest in their own learning, to be active participants in their learning, and to make choices to discover their passions. But really to have them understand that they have a responsibility in part for their own success, and that all of these skills will serve students well as they continue their studies in high school. So those are some of the adjustments to be made. Jen, I think you have the next question.
Sorry, I was muted. Thanks, Nancy. I'm a little rusty with Zoom these days, which I'm actually happy about. The next question is for you, Tom. How does the grade 9 classroom experience help with the transition from middle school to high school?
Thanks, Jen. Well, the first thing to remember is that we have 9th grade students coming from the different middle schools in Newton, as well as local private schools, as well as students who are moving to the district to attend Newton North High School. We have each summer we always have a number of new students who come to Newton North as 9th graders. So students are coming in with an array of backgrounds and experiences. With that in mind, building community is a major focus in ninth grade classrooms. There will be school-wide events and experiences for ninth graders, but much of this building community work happens in the classroom. If you visit our classrooms, you will not see teachers in front of the class delivering lectures to students sitting in rows. You'll see students sitting at desks in groups of 4 and 5 working on activities, projects, or experiments, with the teacher moving around the classroom and checking in with groups or individual students. Properly planned group projects and activities help students to develop strong communication skills, help them learn to delegate roles and responsibilities, share diverse perspectives, pool knowledge and skills, and tackle more complex problems than they may have tried on their own. This is how we build community in ninth grade classes. Students develop their interpersonal skills as they form new relationships with other students they haven't known, and the adults in the building. At the same time, they are accessing the content and skills taught in their courses. Through this kind of instruction, we're bringing these students together and building a stronger high school community. Sometimes we find these students have a strong academic background in certain areas. If this is the case, we encourage these students to delve more deeply into the subject area, making connections from prior learning experiences and continuing to build their interpersonal skills. A major focus in the transition is acclimating the ninth graders to the high school while assessing and building their skills together to build the foundation for the rest of their high school careers. So as I'm the science and tech person, I just wanted to talk briefly about why Newton North offers physics to freshmen. Why did we make this move 20 years ago? And as parents, you probably remember the high school curriculum used to be you would take biology and then chemistry and then physics. And not a whole lot of people ended up taking physics later on in high school. A lot of students never got to physics. So the idea of physics first came in vogue about 20 years ago, and we were one of the first high schools to implement it. Offering physics first, then chemistry, then biology makes a whole lot of sense. Physics is the foundation of all the other sciences. To truly understand chemistry, you need to know some basics in physics. To understand biology, especially these days when so much of our biology curriculum is based on molecular biology and biochemistry, you really need to know chemistry. So 20 years ago, we made that switch, and since then, a lot of high schools have done the same thing. The one other thing I want to mention is that the only MCAS that the ninth graders take is the physics MCAS. And our ninth grade students have performed very, very well on that particular MCAS exam.
All right, thank you, Tom. I have the next question. Jen, could you tell us a little bit about what supports and resources are available here and how do students access them?
Absolutely. Thanks, Greg. We are a school that really does focus on the whole student, and I do think that this is reflected in how we identify our supports at Newton North High School. So the first place where I'd like to discuss this is around the social emotional support that is available to students. Students are all assigned school counselors in our building, and we made a shift at Newton North this year where our school counselors are working with all 4 grade levels. So each of the school counselors will be working with some ninth graders coming into the school next year. And you know, as family members and caregivers, you can help students to be encouraged to reach out to their counselors. They're spread out in offices all around the building on all of the different floors. And in addition, the school counselors can be accessed with support from classroom teachers or deans that are also there to help and support your student. Our deans are also there as a source of support for students, socially, emotionally, academically. Yes, they also help to get involved with discipline in the school, but that is not the sole role that the deans do play. They are really important in building relationships with students and getting to know them well to help them to navigate our school efficiently and effectively. As department chairs, we also are here to support our students and help them make sure that they're able to access what they need in the school. And we really do enjoy opportunities to get to know students more intimately in their time here at Newton North. Our classroom teachers, especially in ninth grade, really get to know students well. It's a critical time in that transition time from middle school to high school. And I have seen for over the years that our ninth grade teachers do really build very strong relationships with students. And often those turn into mentorships that last for 4 years at Newton North High School. So that classroom teacher really can play a very important role to students in our building. We have a number of affinity groups at Newton North High School to support our students and their various identities. And we do advertise these in regular communication home to students and families. And if a student feels as though they're not able to access those communications, they're encouraged to reach out to their classroom teachers or their school counselors to make sure that they are getting the information they need about those affinity groups. At Newton North, we have an amazing array of clubs and activities and sports and extracurricular options that are really just incredible. Having taught in multiple places, I was completely blown away when I started teaching here at Newton North with all of the options that are available to students. If you have an interest, there is a student that shares that interest, and there is a club or activity where you can go to be able to celebrate it. And if there isn't one, then all you need to do is find an adult to support you. And you will have a new club or activity ready for others to join in. So I just see those areas as a place where students are able to really nurture themselves in a way that's different than what happens in a traditional classroom. We're really excited about the way that the idea of what we call a win block or what I need block has launched. I'm sure you heard that in the introductions this evening. Win block is not just about academics. It's really a great time for students to be able to get some of their social and emotional needs met. It can be a time for students to take a break in the day. Teachers have been working hard to provide creative offerings to students so that they really truly get what they need. And for some students, that might look like taking a walk around the track or playing basketball in the SOA or the gym. There are also other social groups and counseling groups that meet during WIN blocks so that students have a variety of needs met during that time. So we're really excited about the way that WIN is able to support students in a variety of ways. And this all gets kicked off with advisory that happens on Mondays. And we have Dr. Chris Wood here from the World Language Department, who's also an advisory teacher. And he's going to share a little bit more about his experiences as an advisory teacher this year with all of you.
Thanks, Jen. Thanks for letting me share a little bit about advisory. So when is advisory? Advisory is one block per week. It's always the second block of the week. So it's really a way of welcoming kids back from the weekend to school and helping them decompress and gear up for the week at Newton North High School. It's a relatively random grouping of students. It's a non-academic, no pressure, 50 minutes at the beginning of the week. These students are typically students who wouldn't necessarily see each other during the rest of the week. They might not be taking the same classes. They might have different academic interests, different extracurricular interests. But for at least that 50 minutes, it's a home community where we can get to know each other in a way that we might not be able to get to know each other otherwise. There are a couple of things that we really do try to do during advisory. One thing is to get kids ready for WIN. So we try to help students figure out how they want to spend their WIN time for the week, what kind of balance they're looking for, what they need, and help them find those blocks that they need to sign up for the week. And the other thing we do is we help them process, often sometimes formally, sometimes informally, some of the more important events that are happening in our world. So we might have a lesson on a particular episode of national import, or we might just process things informally. But I think the most important thing that happens in WIN block is, well, we used to call it homeroom. So it's really kind of a home base for students, and it's a place for them to interact with faculty in a no pressure situation and get to know students that they might not get to know otherwise.
Thanks so much, Dr. Wood. I want to also just share a little bit more about the different academic supports that we have at Newton North. And I mentioned this a little bit in talking about when our win blocks are a way for students to be able to access their academic teachers in a school day. And it's a great way for students to be able to do that and not feel like they're always doing outside time after school or before school in order to get the support that they need. And when I say support might mean connection with a teacher that's really passionate about a subject that they really also like. Support could mean I'm struggling and I need a little bit of help. Support could also mean I'm like really wanting to geek out on math. And so I just want to go in there and have you teach me as much as you possibly can about this thing that we're learning to go even deeper. So WIN is a great place for that to be able to happen. We also have an amazing peer tutoring program here at Newton North. It's something that's been around for a while. It's a place where students can work with students to get academic help and support in a particular subject area, sometimes more than one subject area, depending on the tutors that are available. We've had some teachers here working really hard to partner students together and make successful pairings. And it ends up also being really kind of like a mentorship that students share. So it's not just about the academic help, but it's about the student skills and navigating a really large high school, as Nancy mentioned earlier, and trying to make it just a little bit smaller. And then lastly, as ninth graders, if a student doesn't have a scheduled course or elective, they will have a study in their schedule. And that's a time that they will be able to be in a space working quietly, potentially on homework. But there's also some academic help that they may be able to seek out during that time. For example, in the math department, we try to have teachers scheduled either in the library, supporting the library, or in other directed studies. And we communicate where they are to students so that if they're in a study someplace else somewhere else in the building, they're able to go seek out some math help from a teacher that's in a directed study. And that works out really well in terms of making sure that students are able to get the academic help that they need. A lot of times people will say, if my student's having a hard time or if I have a question about something, where do I go and what do I do? And the best advice that I can give to you as incoming families is to go directly to the source. So if your student has a question about something that's going on in a particular classroom, please speak directly to that classroom teacher. They're going to know your student best and be able to speak specifically to the details around a situation. We really find that most questions or what may be perceived as a conflict at the beginning can be resolved really quickly by having a direct conversation. Sometimes parents will come to department chairs first thinking that that's the place to go, but we don't always know all the details and will often involve the classroom teacher. And if our support's needed, of course, we're there to help navigate, but going directly to the source and the classroom teacher is often the best way to do that. Finally, I just want to let you know that we do have a student intervention team that's led by deans and counselors with input from teachers and other educators in the building. So if students have a transition to the high school and they're having a hard time, we have a lot of minds that work together to notice what's going on and work really hard to make sure that students are getting the appropriate intervention and support that they need when they're here.
Thank you, Jen. The number of supports that you just mentioned really emphasizes our own belief in supporting students at all levels and all grades with anything that they need at Newton North, academic, social, emotional, it runs the gamut. So it is something that I think is very special about this school, the number of supports that we have for students. I have the next question. It's a little bit of a different topic. Our course catalog is called Opportunities. I think it's very appropriately named. And in that catalog, we see a number of courses that are labeled college prep, advanced college prep, and honors. So Greg, I wanted to ask you, what is our philosophy around placement at Newton North, and what is the difference in levels?
After 2 years of a pandemic, how can I not remember to unmute myself? I apologize. Great question, Nancy. And I think that one of the things that will come as maybe a surprise to some students coming out of the middle school is our real belief that they should be involved in the decision-making process around placement. And so we really think about, when we think about placement, we think about what is the level of support that an individual student needs, what's the level of scaffolding a student needs, and how can we challenge them most appropriately, but still have enough supports in place for them to be successful. Another factor that we think about when we talk about level placement is, what does a student's overall schedule look like? And what's their overall workload going to be like? I know Jen talked about some of our social and emotional supports, and really one of the biggest stressors we find on many students is feeling like they have too much work to do. So when we have placement conversations, sometimes it's not about what are you able to do in this particular class, but what does your whole schedule look like? So, with that in mind, sometimes a student may choose 1 or 2 classes where they're going to really stretch themselves, and they may find there are 1 or 2 classes where they need extra support. And I think that really speaks to this idea that we don't put students on a track in 9th grade and just send them off. We're really constantly evaluating, what does a student need? What level of support does a student need? What level of challenge is a student able to take on? And so, I'll tell you, this time of year, we're starting to have conversations. I teach 9th graders, so I'm starting to have conversations with my 9th graders. And the way I involve them is I'm having a one-on-one conversation with every student, and I'm just asking them about their experience this year. What are the things that have felt hard? What are the things that have felt comfortable? Where are the areas that they want to grow? And we do that as part of this conversation of what's the right level placement for them going forward. And it's also tied to this idea that students over the course of their 4 years here are getting better at not just learning, but getting better at understanding their learning and understanding what works for them and really taking charge of their own learning. So that being said, for most subjects in 9th grade, a student will take a course at either the CP level or the ACP level. And I'll just give you a little bit of an overview about what you could expect in each of those levels. And then I'll talk to you a little bit about some of our multi-level courses, which are courses where those levels are existing in the same classroom space. So in general, a student that's enrolled at the CP level will receive more scaffolding of assignments, particularly longer term assignments. Things tend to be broken down into smaller chunks with more explicit structure. And often case, there'll be more time available in class for students to work on written assignments so that they can really get more of that one-on-one or small group coaching. In an ACP class, oftentimes the class size is going to be a bit larger. We expect greater independence in completing assignments, both long-term and short-term. But the thing that I'd like to stress is that in both courses, the content will be essentially the same. It's really about pacing and level of support. My colleague, Melissa Dilworth, who's the department head for English, their department uses this concept of a ladder. And she says that students are starting at the bottom of the ladder and trying to reach the same height at the top of the ladder. It's just that some students need more rungs to climb in between. Some students can jump over rungs and get there with less support. Some students need that extra support, but in the end, we're trying to achieve very similar goals. I would say that what I really want to stress also is that, we are constantly checking in. So I know there's probably, there's this anxiety coming out of 8th grade. What if my student is misplaced? What if my student is placed in the wrong level? If that happens, our teachers are going to know that pretty quickly. And they're going to engage that student and say, hey, it seems like this is a lot easier for you than, it should be. Or it seems like you're really struggling with X, Y, and Z. And being able to have that conversation at any time, really in the first 3 months of the school year, allows us to make sure that kids are in the levels that are most appropriate for them, where they can succeed. So be sure to, rest assured that those conversations are happening, not just at registration time, but throughout the year. The final thing is just talking about this idea of multi-level courses. I'm sure you've heard the term multi-level courses, and a multi-level course is essentially a course where different levels are existing in the same physical space, right? Students are enrolled in the course at different levels, and teachers are differentiating the instruction in order to meet the diversity of student needs before them. As a school, we're really committed to this because we believe that these multi-level courses provide a rich experience for students within a diverse learning community, right? Students who often spend their whole day surrounded by students who think the same way they do and learn the same way they do are exposed to a broader variety of experiences and learning styles. And we really believe that students don't just learn from teachers, that students learn from each other. And that in multi-level courses, we're helping to set up structures for that and also increase access to some of our upper level courses and increase equity for all students. We really believe that, for lack of a better word, honors level thinking and honors level experiences should be available to all kids. And so in history, just for example, our 10th grade courses are mixed level honors ACP. What we find is there are ACP students who didn't feel confident in signing up for honors, who then are exposed to the ideas and the excitement in that classroom with honors, with students that are also signed up for honors, and they decide they want to move up right in the middle of the year. And that really is, it's one of the nice side effects of multi-level classes. It gives a lot more flexibility for change without having a big impact on a student's schedule. Jen, I know math is a bit different or has more levels, so I'm going to let you take a second there to talk about some math specifics.
Math has been a subject that has some of the most levels of any of the subjects that have been offered. And that's a historical piece of mathematics teaching and learning that has existed for a long time. And one of the things that we have noticed about that is that all the different levels was really creating a rigidity that carried throughout high school for students, and also impacted students' mindsets about how they saw themselves as math learners and mathematicians. So we have been offering multi-level classes in math for a number of years now. Our CP and ACP classes have been combined for at least 3 years now, if I'm doing my math correctly. And next year will be our second year of offering our accelerated and honors classes together. We've done a lot of work in the math department in terms of the alignment of the topics and the math standards that are taught in the 9th grade course, Math 1. And so as a result, what we want to make sure we're doing is making sure that all students have lots of opportunities to be accessing mathematics at the most challenging level possible as early as possible. And that in doing that, we're making sure that we're providing open doors to future experiences for students along the way. We want to make sure that we're not closing off those opportunities so early on as students are transitioning from middle school to high school. And so your student will be working with their 8th grade teacher around this. If you're in a Newton public school currently, I've worked for many years collaboratively with the 8th grade math teachers at our 2 feeder middle schools with respect to understanding the levels. If you're somebody that's coming from outside the district, I really do encourage you to access our opportunities book and take some time to read the information that's there. We really do spend a lot of time trying to make sure that the details are clearly explained. And now is also a good time to also share that there's specific information that each of our departments has shared about our courses and what the levels mean in each of our department areas, because there are subtleties and differences. And I think that it would be very helpful to all of you to access that information that we have shared on the website as part of tonight. So if you didn't have a chance to preview it before coming, it would be really great for you to revisit it after this evening.
A little bit about placement in world languages. Our emphasis is really on placement at the appropriate proficiency level. So for the modern languages, that means really their skills in reading, writing, speaking, and listening. In Latin, it would be actually reading and translating. That's what we converse with the ancients. That's what our goal is in Latin. We do not teach it as a spoken language. But I want to emphasize what Greg said, that we're constantly checking in with students to particularly with freshmen. They're coming from various places, as Tom mentioned, and we want to make sure that they're in the right course. I saw a question in the chat. There is movement that is possible, and we one of the real advantages to multi-level courses is that, as Greg said, if we have to move a student from CP to ACP, there's no impact, there's no domino effect on the rest of their schedule. We do sometimes have to move students into different courses. We try to minimize that so that they are not moving all of their teachers around. So we try to get placement as correct as possible, knowing that it's not a science, as they're coming in, as we're building their schedule. So in world language, the goal is really to develop in those novice classes a firm foundation for their language study in subsequent years, at whatever level they find is more appropriate for them. We have full programs in 5 languages: Mandarin Chinese, French, Italian, Spanish, and Latin is also an option at the high school. We also agree what Jen had said, we don't believe in early sorting. So that's why our novice courses are, most of them are multi-level CP, ACP. Our honors program starts in third year for most students, that's sophomore year. And we do really involve students in the placement process. They're making choices, they're deciding on where their passions lie, and we believe in a balanced schedule. I saw 2 questions in the chat that I quickly want to address. One is, what if a student is studying a language currently at the middle schools and wants to change their language? The appropriate time to do that really is when they enter 9th grade. I would say just about every college except for community colleges want to see 2 years of world language study at the high school level, the same language. But many colleges want to see 3 years of the same language at the high school, studied at the high school level. So if they're going to change languages, coming into 9th grade is the time to do it. If they have no previous experience, they would start in a novice 1 class. I also saw a question about heritage speakers. So if you have a child who is a heritage speaker of a language that we teach and needs specialized placement, we will do that. The way to begin that process is to either connect with your child's current world language teacher. They know how to contact me. They know what the process is for placement for heritage speakers. If your child does not have a world language teacher currently, then if you speak to an 8th grade counselor, they will get in touch with me about placing heritage speakers. And we place them in the course that is at the most appropriate proficiency level for their skills.
And I'll just briefly say we're at the end. The introductory physics is offered at the college prep and the advanced college prep level, and we're piloting some sections of multi-level. Also, there's other great science electives out there, technology and engineering. Check out the catalog, you'll see those.
And I just typed this out, but there was a question about multi-level, and I just wanted to share that multi-level is really a structure in terms of how a class is delivered, but that ultimately it's not a choice that a student makes to either be in a multi-level class or not. A student chooses the course that most appropriately matches their interest and their ability level. And then depending on the different departments and how levels may be combined together, we're going to get to know students as best we can in those classroom environments and differentiate to meet their needs.
All right, we didn't do as well as we did the last time. We're 2 minutes over. Have a good night, everybody. We'll see all your kids in the fall.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.